What's up guys, it's Shadow Codes here, and in today's video we are doing server replication for our VR games. This is good for a multiplayer VR game, and even if you're not making one, you should still do this because the scripts we are doing are going to make your life so much easier when we're making movement code and grabbing. So to start, if everybody has a starter character, that isn't horrible for certain things, but for what we're gonna do, it's not gonna be very helpful. So instead of having a starter character, we are just going to place our character wherever we so choose. Let's place it here, because why not? Now, let's rename this to something like player parts. So, player parts. And we're just going to pop that right into replicated storage. And now, when we play it, you won't have a VR game anymore. You're going to have a regular, boring old Roblox game on a template. You know, that is no fun. But, you see, since this is how we're going to do it, instead of starter characters, we're going to need some... Bro forgot how to... Bro's just gliding. Anyway, we're going to have some place for our characters to be stored. So, what we will do is we're probably just going to put this under the map because that's where you're going to spawn by default. There's no stopping it. So, I think we should utilize that, and we're just going to put them in like a little box. So, just make one wall, and then copy and paste it. So, let me just do that. Alright, and then we're going to add a little ceiling. Perfect. And you're going to want to anchor all of them. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So, now you've trapped the players. They will never be able to escape. You might want to put some food and water in there for them, but for now, I'll let them starve. Because we need to focus on actually doing our VR code. So, first, we're just going to need to remove these. Well, not the VR client, don't remove that. But you don't really need duplicates of your character scripts, and even though they have the same name, and they are empty, so let's just not have that empty. Now, they recently had all of this stuff put into the starter player scripts, and I'm sure you can disable these for movement. Personally, I don't know how I feel about that, but we're not really going to get into this code. We don't really care about this. This isn't going to have anything to do with our stuff, but if you just want the characters not to be able to move, you could disable it, but you can't do it from here since it's a core script needed. But let's just not worry about that. We actually need to do our thing. So, first, we have our old code, right? We have all this. We are going to keep this, but we are going to make a server script in server script service called VR server. If I learn how to spell and use capitals. One day I'll get there. So, inside this script, we need to define a few things. But first, before we do anything, inside replicated storage, we're going to add a folder called events. Because this is where we're going to store everything like remote events. Everything that's really needed for our game, at least event-wise, is going to be in this event folder, hence the name. So we can just call this VR update, because this is going to be how the server and client communicate so that you can display your whatever you want. For right now, it's just going to be the head and hand movements, but eventually it'll be stuff like what the players look like and all that fun stuff. So we need to get a few things, but first we need to give both of us replicated storage because we need access to that event. Awesome. I'm just gonna grab that because my S key is broken. And we're just gonna get the same thing. I love this. Alright, so we have that. We need a few more services before we really do anything. So we're gonna need run service. We're gonna need VR service. We're gonna need replicated storage, which we already have. We'll need user input service. And you're going to need players. And then we're gonna get the events folder, so local events equals replicated storage, wait for child events in case it's not fully loaded, but on the server it should be, but just to be safe, we'll still wait for the child. And then same thing for the VR event, so local update VR events equals, now we're going to go into the events folder and wait for child VR update. Now that we've defined the events, let's actually start using it. So, update VR event on server events, connect function, and we're going to get the player, the state the value 1, nope, 1, value 2, value 3. These values are basically going to be used for anything, really, depending on what the state is. So, for example, if state is equal to joined, we would get the player model. We would get it from replicated storage. So replicated storage, wait for child, player parts, and then we would clone it. Now, we actually do kind of need to call this event. So if we go back to the VR client, we're going to so we go here and we are going to actually call it from here. Really, all we're gonna do, if you have this line, all you should really do, just replace it with update. Oh wait, we don't have it up here. So you can kind of just copy it. Yoink. And put it right there. I think that's a good spot to put it. And then update VR event. We are going to fire server. And we're going to give it the joined. And now, what we are going to do, multiple people are likely going to join your game. So, we're going to have a table filled with all the players, more like their characters per se. It would be a table containing all of the player parts, which would be all the characters of the VR people. So, we would probably just put it right there, and we're going to edit the table here. So for player parts player, it will equal another table with all the actual parts. So we're going to need the model of the player, and it would be equal to the player model. We would need a right hand, which would be equal to the player model, wait for child, right hand. Same thing for left hand. Left hand. Ooh. You need to add a comma, otherwise it thinks it's one big thing, which makes no sense. Right, so make sure you add those. And then we'll do it for head equals player model, wait for child, head. Then I'll just add that there because we are going to edit this at some point later in the series. I don't want to forget. Now we're going to... Oh. Don't be like me, guys. Alright. Player model dot name is going to be equal to player dot name. And then we're gonna add it onto this. So this will join these two things together. We will have the parent is gonna be the workspace, and then what we are gonna do is we're going to do update VR event, fire clients, player and player model. Now that's all we're going to do for right now, because we have made it so that the server has the player parts when this comes in, but the client doesn't actually have a player. It's not controlling anything. So we're going to give it a player. So what we are going to do is server player parts. So local server player parts equals equals update VR event. Wait. Oh my goodness. The on client event. Wait. And then that is going to be that's going to be the parts that we just made on the server, and we are going to need player parts on the client, right? So player parts equals server player parts clone, and then player parts parents equals workspace, and the server player parts, we'll just destroy them. So it's going to give each client a copy of their own player parts. So imagine this is you. So we're going to give him blue to represent the client. And you have your friend. And this is his clients, right? Now, his client is blue. And he would see your parts, but they would be on the server, which would be green. And the opposite is also true. Okay, if this is you, you would see your friend as the server. Now, the server itself, which I'll put as just this little part, you send that you've joined, and it tells the server, hey, this man joined. So it gives you it makes a copy of you, and then only for the client destroys your specific copy so that you can't see yourself. But then your friend sees your client copy, right? So this would be this is how your friend sees you. Okay? This is the same. So all this does, you see your friend because your friend has told the server that they exist. And the server says, alright, yep, this man exists, let's create this so that you see your friend. But it also tells the client back, it says, you don't want to see yourself, so we're just going to delete this, but only for you. So that way, they see each other, but they are both client and server for each other. I hope that made sense. So now what we are going to do is we're actually going to update the CFrame for each of the players. And I mistakenly had you add this in the last episode, which you didn't have to do, but now you do have to, because we are going to use that to end up doing this. Wait, actually, we don't need this. I don't know why I keep saying we need this. We don't need that. That is not needed. Okay. So we're going to update the VR event E once again, firing the server. This time with a new state. It's going to be player. That says plater. Player CFrame. I'm smart. And it's going to pass the right hand final CFrame, the left hand final CFrame, and the head final CFrame. And then over here, that will be our value 1, value 2, and value 3. So, we're going to have an else if that says if our state equals player CFrame, right, we are going to make it so it displays that. So we are going to take those parts that we have in the table, and we are going to make sure if we have parts, because if we don't, we kind of want to ignore this. If we have parts dot right hand dot CFrame equals value 1, parts dot left hand dot CFrame equals value 2, parts dot head dot CFrame is value 3. That is going to be all for this. So let's just look. Are we missing anything? Yes, we are. We are most certainly missing something. Right now, we have this, but let's just put it down here. We need to define each individual player part here. So, local right hand equals the client's player parts. Okay, so player parts, no server player parts. It'll be player parts. Wait for child. I said wait for child. Right hand We're going to do the same for the left hand and the head. And then we actually don't want to see our head. So just in case something weird happens and we do end up seeing our head, let's just make it so we can't. And we're just going to set the transparency all the way down or up to 1 so that it's completely invisible. And that should be everything, and it should work. So now you can see it actually works. You can see the other player. I don't know why my screen is glitching out like that, but you can see the other player. He's trying to punch me for some reason, so I'm gonna punch back. But it actually works. Alright, so we know that it works, but before I go, I do want to do 2 more things. First, I want to make it so that your actual player, you can't collide. So we're going to make a collision group in model. That's going to be somewhere. Oh wait, no. View. I'm dumb. Why am I so dumb? So I don't... So we are going to do collision groups. I have my own tab called useful that has collision groups because I don't know where it is. And we're going to just call it player. And player can collide with everything but player. We don't want it to collide with player. This would be our whole table. Player just doesn't happen. And now we actually do have to set that, and we're going to do that in another script because I don't want to interfere with our current VR script. And we might have to use this for possibly like save data or something, but we won't cover that in this series. So we need the players thing. Players. And players.player added connect function player. We want the player dot character, so local player dot character. If not player dot character, then return end. We want to break out of it. There's nothing. But if there is, then we are going to for I part in player or no in car do part nope and you can actually see it here. There's collision groups, so part dot collision group is equal to player. It's really basic. Nothing too special. We're just going to call this onPlayerAdded. Now, you shouldn't see any notable difference, but this next one we have to clean up, because right now, if you leave, your character kind of just stays. So we want to fix that. So up here, we're going to write a new function. It's going to be called local function destroy player, or you can call it like clean up player, but for right now, all it's doing is destroying it, so that's all we are going to do. Now, local parts is going to be equal to the player parts player, and if parts dot model and parts dot model dot parent, so it actually has a parent, then parts dot model destroy, and then we're going to remove it from the table. So player parts player equals nil. And then there are two instances in which we want to destroy our player. The first one is when they actually join for the first time. If they have any player parts previously, we want to get rid of it. So we'll call destroy player, and then down here, when a player leaves, we'll do player removing connect destroy player. Okay, and that will fix when a player leaves, they kind of just stay. That doesn't happen anymore. That's all for this episode of the VR series. In the next episode, I want to add player name tags and avatars. And we're just going to make it look like the actual Roblox character so that you can actually tell who your friends are or whatever. So I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.